Hello, RiseUP Visionaries. I'm Susan May, and I'm here today with a special guest that will help you on your journey of unplugging. Today's guest has a ton of knowledge and experience with properly using vitamin C. This is probably the number one question that I get, topic that I get questions about. Now, some may wonder, what does vitamin C have to do with unplugging? So before I introduce our guest, I just want to explain to you how vitamin C is a powerful catalyst for unplugging from the mainstream. Last year, when the you know what hit the fan, my family had been using high doses of vitamin C for about 4 years. In fact, we had been using vitamin C because of our guest today, because he is the person that led me to it. So I am just thrilled and excited that he's here. So over those 4 years, we had seen how much our personal health, our overall health had improved. And we also saw how quickly we could be an acute illness. In addition, my father was using intravenous infusions of vitamin C for cancer treatment. It's not an exaggeration to say that the results from him using vitamin C were miraculous. So when fear started being pushed on the masses, it literally had zero impact on my immediate family. In a way, vitamin C inoculated us against fear. In this way, vitamin C has helped and continues to help us stay unplugged from mainstream media and medicine. That's why I'm so passionate about vitamin C and want to spread the word. Literally, knowledge of vitamin C has the power to transform our world. So it's no wonder that they do so much to suppress and censor the information. So let's get started. I am going to bring our guest on. So if you can unmute yourself. And I am thrilled today to introduce our guest, Theo Farmer. Theo and his family are pioneering orthomolecular regenerative farming, that's a mouthful, on their farm in Oregon. They are eliminating the use of pharma and ag chemicals on the farm, and they've largely eliminated disease in animals using orthomolecular methods. That is incredible. I first came across Theo when his post about honey spoons was getting a lot of shares. I still remember this. I will never forget it. I was immediately intrigued, and it led me to the orthomolecular vitamin C group and learning all about how high doses of vitamin C work. Since then, I have learned more and more from Theo and his posts. Theo is also the author of the book, Buttercup, Me, and Vitamin C, an excellent resource for introducing our children to the miraculous health promoting properties of vitamin C. In fact, Theo would like to start our time with a reading of this beautiful book. Theo, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Susan. I'm honored to be on your video log here.
Yes.
And yeah, so as we kind of agreed, I'd like to just start reading the book because it takes about 10 minutes, and encompassed in this poem is really everything you need to know about vitamin C that we don't learn. All right.
Awesome.
The foreword's written by Andrew Saul, who's a mega vitamin man, and that's has been an honor for me. My cow is named Buttercup. She is my cow. She's different than me, but the same, and here's how. She grazes on pasture and drinks lots of water. She eats grass and plants that us farmers call fodder. To use grass as food, she has 3 extra tummies. I have just 1 stomach for all of my yummies. My stomach is just like her 4th one, no question. The first three she has ferment grass for digestion. 4 stomachs is one way I'm different than cows, but her 4th one's the same, and we all know that now. We're the same and we're different at the same time. It's fun to learn all about cows with a rhyme. Another way Buttercup's different than me is that all day her body makes vitamin C. When I feel yucky, in bed nice and warm, I think about Buttercup out in the storm. If she caught this cold, would Mom tuck her in bed? No, she never gets colds as long as she's fed. Using some of her food, she'll make vitamin C. Making vitamin C, that consumes energy. She makes more whenever her body is stressed and less when she's healthy and happy and blessed. She never gets measles and never rubella. The vitamin C keeps her healthy, I tell ya. It's different for humans. No vitamin C is made by our bodies to combat disease. If we don't take enough, we can get scratchy throats, colds and flus, runny noses. But what about goats? Goats make vitamin C and they make it a lot. They can make more than cows, but not us. We cannot. But what if I take it like Buttercup makes it? She makes C all day, so I'll take it at 9. Then I'll take more at noon and then 2 or more times. I can match in my body what Buttercup makes. I can take even more C if that's what it takes. And if I get sick, I can take C more often. I'll take it until I stop coughing. I'll take it until my sore throat goes away. I'll think about Buttercup chomping her hay. Never a sniffle because she makes C. We're the same, but we're different. Take it from me. The cells in my body and hers are the same. The cells in my skin and my hair and my brain. The vitamin C makes our bodies robust. She makes it all day and I'll take just as much. We're the same and we're different at the same time. It's fun to learn all about cows with a rhyme. By studying nature's design, we discern and discover abundance in all that we learn. And then there's Mommy and Daddy's Guide to Vitamin C.
Wow.
I'm not going to read it.
That is awesome.
Thank you. So I wrote this book after years of frustration trying to break through people's resistance to learning about vitamin C. And the simplest thing that I could think of, and that this poem was kind of just came to me actually. It was one of those, I'd written it and I bounced things. I'd written a children's book, but and I kept trying to enlist my wife, who's a commercial artist, to be the illustrator, and she was like, yeah, I don't like the book. And then finally I wrote the poem and did it like kind of a Dr. Seuss thing, and then she was like, that's it, So what it does is with each page, there's like decades of science behind that statement. And the simple thing that no one learns, so you can get a master's in biology, biochemistry, and you never learn that other mammals, humans are mammals, other mammals make vitamin C and humans don't make vitamin C. And so that's really the emphasis in the book. I mean, they learn more about cows and stomachs and fermenting and things like that, but to teach at a young age, when I first learned about vitamin C, I was like, I should have learned this in like preschool health class. And so after a couple decades of having lots of people not understand it, I decided, okay, I think we can do this as a children's book, Yeah. And so then when I finished it, right before I sent it to the printer, I got onto Andrew Saul's website, who I'd never talked to, but I've been reading his website for a decade. And I just emailed him through the website and said, hey, I wrote this children's book. What do you think? And he wrote me like right back, and he said, I want to help you do something with this book. And so I said, could you write the foreword? And then he connected me to Dr. Levy, who endorsed the book. And then I started submitting those farming papers and articles. And so it kind of, by writing this children's book, it kind of pulled me in with these really high level people that I've respected like since my 50s, and since I learned about this high dose vitamin C. So
that's amazing. I mean, just that connection that you've made with them, and I can imagine how validating that feels. Yeah.
Yeah, it does, and you know, and I sell the book. I give it away for free. It's a PDF file that you can download, and if you know you don't want to spend the $20, but I think getting a printed copy is really good because you can sit down with your kids, and it's just another Dr. Seuss book, basically.
Yes.
In the article I wrote for the orthomolecular folks, I said, you know, if I as a kid had a children's book by Dr. Pauling or by Dr. Cathcart right next to the children's books by Dr. Seuss, then it would have been, you know, my life would have been different, and my children's life would have been different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what is your hope for this book? Your biggest, if there were no limitations in the world and no, you know, no corruption, what's your biggest dream for this book and your message?
That it destroys limitations and corruption. So if there were none, then, but yeah, so I mean, I got a kind of a burr under my saddle when I realized how damaging it was to be on that path of like taking my children to the doctor whenever they got a cold and giving them antibiotics and having vaccinated them along the way and not understanding disease, not doing any research, just trusting the authorities. And then getting into my 50s and getting a whole new set of authorities that were like, hey, you know, this stuff actually keeps you healthy. It keeps you away from the doctor. It keeps you, and it has all this Nobel level science behind it. And it has all this biochemistry, mammal biochemistry behind it. And you should, you know, I have a degree in engineering physics. I had, you know, all kinds of biology classes and all that kind of stuff. And in my decades of schooling in the 70s and 80s, and never did anybody really sit down and say, hey, let me tell you about vitamin C and the fact that you don't make it and that other mammals do make it. And that became a real awakening to me. And as we got into, I mean, one of my first experiences with turning around an issue was supporting a horse that had broken its hip, which is can be fatal for a horse to break its hip. So we had a horse with a broken hip, and I was doing research on how to help heal this hip, and that's where I first stumbled onto Linus Pauling's work, Cathcart's work, and I started really getting into it. So I just got some ascorbic acid and started pouring it down this horse tube. Well, we immobilized her in a stall for like 6 months, and we just fed her and gave her vitamin C every day. And we created this orthomolecular mash that I publicize on one of my websites that livestock people can use to fortify their bodies with high dose vitamin C. So one of the things in the book is that it talks, that's kind of subtle. It's better in the PDF because you can, some of her food, she'll make vitamin C, making vitamin C that consumes energy. And so this is significant because animals can use up to 30% of the food that they eat, the energy from the food that they eat, just to make vitamin C. And the process is converting glucose, which is blood sugar, to ascorbate, which is vitamin C. And that energy is a limitation for animals. And so if they get sick, like if a cow gets sick, the very first thing I do is max it out with vitamin C.
Okay. Okay. You are like answering so many questions. So I want to like just pause for a minute and back up a little bit. So that horse story, because this is one of my curiosities. When was that? When was that? So you're saying that was like your introduction really to vitamin C, right?
Well, it was my introduction, yeah, to using it. You know, I don't really have things in order because it was more than a decade ago. And we had significant things like I've sent you my video on vitamin C is for child video. And that was about my daughter, who's kind of a genius level person. And she looked I was high dosing vitamin C during I did a lot of hot yoga, and I found out that by I'd stumbled upon this stuff. I think the first thing was the horse, and then I stumbled, and then that just really compelled me. And then I remember I was a consultant at the time, and I was working in an office, and I was coming down with this cold, and I had this bottle of vitamin C on the table, and I just took like 8 pills at once. They were all pills. And then, and because I just read Cathcart stuff, so I thought 8 pills. And then within like 30 minutes, I felt fine. But then I got the runs, so I had to run to the bathroom. And
Hey, Theo, can you hear me?
There's a little chart on this book. I don't know if you can see it very well. I'll lean forward. But it has different diseases on it, like mild cold, severe cold, influenza. This would be the, current thing that we're addressing globally. And it says basically, if you don't take enough vitamin C, this is a day, and you start ramping up, take vitamin C, nothing happens. And then you get to a certain level, all your symptoms go away.
Yeah.
And you experience that. The Honey Spoons post that you read taught you kind of that. If you did exactly what I said in that post, then your kids are taking huge amounts of vitamin C because they're eating it in honey, and they eat it and they go back, and then all of a sudden you'll notice they're better. And so that's what this thing is. Cathcart is the guy who did this chart after treating like 10,000 people in California. He's a Stanford researcher who dedicated his life to vitamin C, really. And these are people that we never hear about, but their science is so solid, and it's so easy to repeat it. So,
okay,
I don't know.
Your video's frozen. So maybe if you hit, but I could hear that whole thing, so that's good. And you cut out a couple times too. So I think it might just be an internet. Yeah, so if you stop your video and start it again, hopefully, there you are. Okay, great. I didn't want to interrupt you because we could hear it. So
okay.
Yeah, there's been a couple times where I've lost you too.
Did you see the chart?
Yes, we could see the chart. Yes, while you were explaining it. That's what it was frozen on. So that's the good news.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
So yeah. Okay. So wait, one more question about the horse thing. You said, how long did you have to immobilize that horse?
Well, for a broken hip on a horse, it's like 6 months. And the smart thing to do, once I've gotten into farming, there's a certain time, there's decision making that you need to do. And if you're emotionally attached to an animal, which my wife is totally emotionally attached to her horses, then you go the distance with them, and you put the effort in. And we were able to turn that horse around, and we rode her after we moved here. We rode her all over the hills, and she was fine. So we recovered her, but she had broken her hip at our house in Corvallis, Oregon, and she'd slipped in some mud, and it's real muddy here, and just kind of sprawled and broken her hip. And then usually you put a horse down when they break their hip, but you didn't. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, so I think you answered one of my questions. So you actually, for you, it was with animals first, not with humans, that you first really started experimenting with vitamin C?
It was kind of both. And part of the reason it was both is that Kira is like so she's kind of was given a whole bunch of vaccines as a child. She had anaphylactic allergy to Vespids. She had several bouts of pneumonia, and while we were learning about this, and while she was resisting my knowledge, you have spousal resistance to what your partner is learning. And so she was like taking 2 grams or taking a gram and getting the runs and not wanting to do anymore and not doing it. But then one time she got pneumonia, and I was like, she woke up in the middle of the night and unable to breathe. And I was like, Cathcart says you have to take, I never say Theo Farmer, I just say Cathcart says you have to take 10 grams every 15 minutes. Can you take 10, and so, and at that point it was like, well, should I die and not listen, or should I try this and maybe get the runs? And So she did, and within an hour, she was breathing and she had the runs. And so it's good when you have pneumonia to trade breathing for sitting on the toilet. And so that's the kind of stuff that had happened. And then my daughter moved in with us and she was pregnant, and she saw me doing this vitamin C, and she got on the internet and researched pregnancy and vitamin C, and she just started ramping up her vitamin C, and
Wow.
she ended up being the first vitamin C baby, and we did research together, and then we made that video that I showed you, C is for Child, and we just became, well, as you have with your whole family, once you realize how powerful it is, then it's like, whoa. And it's like, well, that's a big lie, because Linus Pauling was the only scientist in history to win the Nobel Prize. His book, Vitamin C and the Common Cold, in 1970 was a bestseller. How did that information just like disappear from our lives? And so then you start going down other rabbit holes, right? Like what else are they lying about? And that ultimately what happened with us is we said, okay, we can do this with animals, and we were very interested in farming and animals, and so the other thing that they were lying about was this thing called lactose intolerance, right? So lactose intolerance is actually processed milk intolerance in like 95% of the people. So people who have lactose intolerance are intolerant of all the processing that happens to milk after it leaves the udder. So we had a family cow, or we got a family cow because we found out that Kira, who was extremely lactose intolerant, could actually drink raw milk. And so then we were sharing the milk. So all this stuff was kind of happening at the same time. And we also had started a recording studio. We're kind of like a little over ambitious, I think. And we had too many things happening, but we ended up moving to this 160-acre farm in the middle of Oregon, and saying, I was in my 50s. I was like, now that I know all this stuff, I've got another 50 years at least. And so and then I'll retire. And so between now and then,
you're gonna retire when you're 100.
And stuff, and we'll get food to people, and that's,
So that's your plan, to retire when you're 100.
In interesting journey for 10 years, since we moved here.
Awesome. Okay, we're back. Theo and I had a couple technical difficulties, but we're back on now. So we are going to dive into some basics, but first Theo has something to show us. You're gonna show us your milk, Theo?
I'm showing you some of our milk, and at Helios Farms we do what's called single moo milk, which means it's like single malt whiskey, only so every jar has only one cow's milk in it. So this is Jamie's milk.
Oh.
Our farm currently has a farm community of about 300 people, or 300 families, and we deliver between the middle of Oregon all the way up to Portland. We are milking 15 cows right now. So Jamie is one of those cows, and every time you get milk from us, you know which cow produced your milk. So
15 cows, and you're delivering to about 300 families?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
the cow.
great.
Yeah. The cow produces sometimes 5 gallons a day. So you can, but if you multiply 15 times, 4 or 5, that's plenty of milk for 300 families.
Wow. Okay, so we're gonna go into some basics, but real quick,
okay.
Has your family always been farmers? That was something that someone was wondering.
I was, when we moved to Oregon, we actually moved to Oregon from Florida, but my parents had dragged me around the country up until the time I was around 15. My dad really never decided what he was going to do with his life. And so by the time I was 14 or 13, I think, we moved to Oregon, and then they bought a farm, and that was kind of something we'd aspired to do. And so during my formative years, I raised sheep, and I drove equipment, and I was a mechanic. So I did all this farming stuff, and I put myself through school doing that, my parents used to say, well, what are you learning out there in the fields? And I used to say, well, I'm learning that I don't want to be a farmer, you know. So, and the reason was that was commercial farming, and the farmers didn't have any control what they were doing on the fields. I was driving, you know, in peas and in wheat, and so I never really understood this concept of regenerative farming, but we had enough background in it by the time I was in my 50s that I had something to fall back on. But it's been 10 years of like learning to really work physically, because everything I did before this was computer work. I got a degree in engineering physics. I had a software localization company from the 80s and the 90s, and so I flew all over the world and worked with Japan and Singapore, and so I was a tech guy before, and then that's when all my kids had all these health issues, and we had mainstream, you know, doctor stuff, and so that's in the 80s and 90s I was just a kind of a mainstream, and my kids were dragged through the medical system. I had a child who had a brain tumor. I had a disabled child who's in the book's In Memory of Cameron, and then, you know, started after I sold my company, which was like that fast moving kind of company where you can't think. Then I had more time to think about and reflect back on where on the kind of things we did wrong, really, and so, you know, I became kind of on a mission of, well, I should have learned this stuff early on, you know, when I was getting educated. So that's why I came up with the book. Yeah.
Well, I find that super inspiring, to be honest. So like, it's really been the last 10 years for you, this journey of the orthomolecular and the regenerative farming, like where you're intensely learning and putting it into practice.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think, yeah. I think once you learn that, you have lots of energy, you never get sick. I never, ever, ever get sick. And the other thing that you can do with vitamin C is you can keep yourself from getting muscle sore. You can work all day. You can keep yourself from getting sunburned. You can shut down poison oak. You can, all this stuff that is challenging, you actually, if you're doing it for many years, like I have been doing it, starting back when I was doing hot yoga, I was doing I was doing ultra marathons, kind of an athlete, kind of challenging myself after I'd sold my tech company. And then I stumbled upon vitamin C, and it was like, wow, this is a lot different. I don't have sore knees when I go running, and I don't, it's pretty powerful stuff. So humans don't make vitamin C. Animals do make vitamin C, but they are limited in how much they can make and how quickly they can make it, and how much the body can transport it. So there's limitations, so the animals still do get sick every once in a while if they're under a lot of stress, and it uses ascorbate. And animals are under stress nowadays. They're in cities. And so people who have dogs, they benefit their dog if they're supplementing. They can turn diseases around, and they found all this stuff out. Scientists found out that like veterinarians were treating dogs that had distemper with IV vitamin C, and they found out they could resolve the disease in a day. And so that's a case where an animal's system gets overwhelmed and it can't make enough vitamin C quickly enough, and then the disease takes over, and usually they die, or if they're not treated. So the advantage that humans have is that we don't have any limit on how much vitamin C we can take. So we're not limited, and goats are the best producers of vitamin C, and the best known producers, and they can produce up to 100 grams a day, or 100, and that's usually like a goat that's in heat or stressed out for some reason. They normally just produce 10 grams a day. So for a human to be able to just take 10 grams every 15 minutes is unheard of. And you can shut unheard of in the mammal world. You can't, there's no animal that can produce it like that. So we have this huge advantage because we have these brains that figured out how to make this, you know, vitamin C that was really killing a lot of, we had a disease called scurvy that everybody knows about, that's just basically complete absence of vitamin C in our diet. Mm-hmm. We figured out how to make vitamin C, and then that threatened, I think, the entire medical world. You know, I talk about the guinea pig, and is another animal that doesn't make vitamin C, and the coincidence of that, or the fact that everybody knows, we have that saying, well, you were the guinea pig, you were the one that was experimented on. So the pharmaceutical industry was looking for a creature that they could give all the diseases that humans get. They found a guinea pig that doesn't make vitamin C, and then it became the pharmaceutical test animal. So they just reduced the amount of vitamin C in the diet, and then they can give it all the diseases that we get, and then they can test other things, not vitamin C. And so I talk in the Mommy and Daddy's Guide to Vitamin C, I tell that story. Yeah.
Why don't you blow some people away and tell us how much vitamin C you take every day, Theo?
Okay. every day we use ascorbic acid. I get it from Revitalized Wellness. We should plug her and Katie's company. And so when I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is take a tablespoon of vitamin C, and that's 15 grams. And then if that doesn't give me the runs, then which it usually doesn't, I know I can take about 15 grams and I'm just fine, because everybody, you know, humans get up and they have a morning constitutional. Usually people drink coffee or whatever, and so that's kind of something that encourages that to happen. And then, but if you get, you know, your gut can get really gurgly and you get watery and you get the watery runs if you take too much at once. But that's a good thing to know that you can do that, because that's the amount that your body needs. So there's an amount, there's this thing called bowel tolerance, and Cathcart is the one who really characterized it and said, wow, your bowel tolerance goes way up when you're sick. So you can take 200 grams of vitamin C, where normally you can only take 20 grams of vitamin C or 15 during the day. So I always, as a 62-year-old, so I figured that my body probably will need 1 gram per year of age, so 60 grams. But I've been high dosing for 10 years, and so I have a tolerance of it. I have an understanding of it. I don't get nervous if my gut gets all gurgly. I just get close to the bathroom and beware, because it can be a disaster if you're on a long trip or something like that and there's no rest up. So anyway, I'll get up, take 15 grams, and then I go to work, farming work. If it's really physical work, usually by midday, I'll take another 15. I take another 15 sometime during the afternoon. And then before bed, I'll take a heaping scoop of ascorbic acid, over 15 grams, because at night you don't seem to get the bowel tolerance issues. And I think your bowel tolerance goes way up at night so that you can absorb it, and your brain recharges, your body recharges, and you're ready to go the next day. So taking a big dose before you go to bed is, and you just go right to sleep. I think during sleep, you use a lot of ascorbate. So
what's your preferred method when you take this huge tablespoon?
I just put it in hot water from the tap.
Okay, so you can do it with hot water, and that's fine. So you just do, you don't do a ton of water though, right? You just
it's like maybe a quarter cup of water, a tablespoon, and I just pound it down like a shot of bitter whiskey. But it's really sharp. It's really tart, and I like it. I think it's really good. Part of what this farm became for me was like a laboratory. And so I've written some articles for Orthomolecular about things that we've encountered in these 10 years. Like you read the article on listeriosis with the one steer, and seeing this miraculous turnaround from this fatal disease and being able to turn it around in a couple hours of high dosing an animal with vitamin C, it made me realize that there's something else going on than what you see in the typical animal stuff. And there's a lot of transdermal effect of vitamin C. So like when you're drinking it, you get that big tart hit, and it, like, you know, it can really energize your whole mouth and throat and everything. And I think you're actually getting a good transference of electrons into your brain and your head and neck area. And you'll notice, like, if you're stuffed up at all and you drink it and just hold it in your mouth for a while, then a concentrated dose, then, and you pay attention, in like 30 minutes, you'll notice you're breathing freely, you know. So vitamin C is like that. You have to pay attention. You have to think, okay, I took, you know, 5 grams 30 minutes ago. How do I feel now 30 minutes later? And you often will notice that things that you were feeling are not issues anymore.
So one big question that people have is can there be too much? And people are just really worried about these high doses. They hear that, you know, there can be, you know, there's the kidney stone issue that people get worried about, or just that there can be negative issues from taking too much. So what are your words?
There's there's a lot of really successful myths that keep people away from the idea of high dosing vitamin C. And I think that I always tell people, you know, a goat can make 100 grams a day, you know, and that's IV, that's internal from its. And so if a 150-pound goat can make 100 grams of vitamin C, that means that your mammal body, which is essentially a goat body with God's breath in it, you know, and so you're the same. That's why the book says you're the same as this other mammal. Your cells are the same. You know, there's a lot of similarities. And so your mammal body can use 100 grams of vitamin C. Now, humans recycle vitamin C better than other mammals. We recharge it. But when you think about charging your cell phone, it's a lot quicker to just put a new battery in, you know, or if you, rather than recharging your whatever device it is, if you had a new battery sitting there, you just pop it in and you're ready to go. So
would you say it's fair to say that there is really almost no upper limit, but what people need to do is experiment with their tolerance? Like, I know the advice that I have received on you know, learning from the group is that people start with low amounts and you see what happens with your body and you slowly increase. Is that good?
The problem, we've had a lot of, like Kira's father, you know, he learned about vitamin C. She encouraged him to take more vitamin C. He went home, he took a tablespoon, and then he was on the toilet for like 3 days. And he was like, I'm never doing that again. And so I think it's, don't try this at home. I mean, what Theo's farmer is telling you, because
well, actually, do try it at home. Don't try it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I've had people, because what it can do is it can throw you into this detox mode that lasts like 2 or 3 days. And so I think that's why, and I know that I worked up gradually, because it was like, well, what if I take this much, you know, what if I take this much this day, and then I forget about it and go about my day. And then, so I took a teaspoon, and then that day I felt really bad. I took those 8 pills, that was 8 grams, which isn't a lot. That was a while ago. That was a little bit of a, you know, that kind of made me realize, oh, well, I can take a lot, and I should take a lot. And the main thing, and Andrew Saul even says that, you know, just you keep taking it until your symptoms are gone. So right. And you take it, and your body absorbs it, and you take it again. And I think the thing that happens as you high dose more and more is that you absorb it more quickly. So if I ever have any kind of virus at all, I take my 15 grams, which is my dose that I know I can take and I'm okay. And if my symptoms aren't gone like 30 minutes later, I'm taking another 15 grams.
Yep.
And so that it might, the important thing that people have to have in their mind is they might only be comfortable taking like 8 grams a day or 6 grams a day. But then if they start getting symptoms of anything, they should try 6 grams an hour instead. So it's like a factor of 10. And you see that in mammal biology because the goat makes 10 grams. It spends energy to make about 10 grams a day, which is more than it needs. But then when it's healthy, then if all of a sudden it's stressed, then it's 10 times that amount. And so that concept is kept from us for, and being the kind of technical person that I was early on, there's a lot of history for me. So, and it's hard to kind of fill it all in, but during that time when I was a consultant, I was doing like one thing after another, and my wife and I started a recording studio, and we did that video that you saw, the C is for Child. Well, the reason I did that is because I was plugged into this documentary that I made with another guy it's called Gridiron Gladiators. It's on Vimeo, and it was all about the football concussion thing. That was like, people have forgotten about it now, but there's chronic traumatic encephalopathy and I was learning all this stuff at the same time, and I was like, well, the answer to chronic traumatic encephalopathy is that all these football players should be high dosing vitamin C when they play. And then if you're a gymnast or anything, or and you have that experience where you do like a somersault, like, people, stars in your eyes. Well, that stars in your eyes is actually a minor concussion that you just put yourself through. Whereas if you're high dosing vitamin C, you don't get the stars of an effect of having enough ascorbate in your body. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Am I cutting out? Because you cut out a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. I feel bad, but we'll just keep plugging ahead because this is such good stuff. I know a lot of people are worried about where they get the vitamin C from and how it's made. People are saying, it's made from corn and it could be GMO based. And, everyone's like, we're learning about all these things about what we put in our body. And so to be putting so much into our body and to feel worried about, where is it coming from? What do you know about? I actually don't know a whole lot about that. I have really taken faith with what I've learned, both from you and Katie. Yeah. And I've seen it, my health improve. So I have never really worried that much about it for myself, but I know people do.
Yeah, I think the main thing people need to understand, or the main thing that people need to understand, is that high dosing vitamin C is a remedy for even getting some contamination in the vitamin C. So it's interesting. It's the ultimate detox. I just read an article by Dr. Levy, and it was called "Reversing the Spike Protein." I hope I can say that on the internet without getting cut out. But canceling the spike protein is the title of the article. And when you read that article, it becomes very clear that what a toxin is. And a toxin is anything that drains electrons from your biological cells. And ascorbic acid is its whole function is to restore electrons to cells. So toxic damage is erased by vitamin C. And so when people talk about detox, it's like, well, the ultimate detox is actually the high dose vitamin C, because you're just erasing the damaging effects of the toxin. So the answer to it is, does it matter if it's made from corn? The chemical formula, of is C6H8OH. So it's a molecule. A molecule can't carry genetic information. It's not complicated enough. So GMO doesn't. It's hard for me to say don't worry about it, but but don't worry about it. If you're getting pure ascorbic acid,
Right.
then you're getting what you need.
Right.
And then, depending on how much money you have, you can start shopping around to support, like, if you don't want to support GMO agriculture, I mean, you get ascorbic acid for a penny a gram, which is what I usually get it for, then you don't worry so much about the source. I do like Katie, because she'll do additional purity testing and things like that. What you want is pure ascorbic acid. Like if you're out to buy baking soda, you want pure baking soda.
Right.
If you're out to buy any of these chemicals, citric acid we use on the farm, we want it to be pure. So we look at the analysis that they say, but and there's concerns. People lie. This is made in China. This is made in India. We do. So if I was to advocate for something for America, America should have ascorbic acid manufacturing plants. They don't. Scotland has it, and you can get it from Scotland, and they charge a lot more, and they pay, and they start with tapioca instead of corn because of people's objections. Now, people talk about things like, well, I have an allergy to corn, and when I take corn-based ascorbic acid, or one that came from corn, it triggers that allergy. And I think there's subtle energies sometimes that I don't know that have been quantified. And so in those cases, I can listen to those arguments, and say, well, just buy the stuff that's made from tapioca then, if that's what's happening to you. And in that orthomolecular group that we're both in, where there's like 80,000 people in there, there's all kinds of stories. And I don't experience any of that, and I'm not concerned about it. And but I hear of people in a 3 or 4 year adjustment period, and that 3 or 4 year adjustment period is going to be detoxing you and clear. If you've been vaccinated, if eating a standard American diet, then you do need to be prepared for your body to go through a bunch of changes.
Right.
And those are not, I've heard of that. And I think that can happen internally. I think that people could have old surgeries that need a little bit of repair. They can have tumors that are small that they don't even know about, and they somehow open, and then there's a whole bunch of toxins in the body. And so once your body has everything it needs to heal, and that one of the main things is high levels of ascorbate, it starts healing, and healing is not necessarily comfortable. So
right.
Some of these reactions, I think, are more about them getting on the right path than it is about a reaction to ascorbic acid. So anyway, that covered more than your question.
No, I think that's great information to have, and it is confusing for people, right? It's like, and so it is a process. It is experimenting. But my husband had this thing, I don't know if you've ever heard this, where like his tongue, there were like bumps on his tongue that hurt a few times after he did, and he was the same way. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore, but he pushed through. After a while, he's like, okay, well, it's worth it. And so I think there's all sorts of things that can happen to your body, like you're saying, and depending on your personal health level, you don't know.
So you're, if you think about the mouth, it's been treated very poorly. It's been the kinds of things in it. I do think you have to be in it for the long run. The same is actually true with the raw milk. The raw milk is known to heal eczema, for example. And when people start drinking raw milk, you start drinking, say, a cup a day of raw milk from a cow, the thing that's most likely going to happen is you're going to have the worst eczema outbreak you've ever had. And so people who have eczema start drinking raw milk, and they're like, whoa, as soon as I started drinking that raw milk, it got really bad. Mm-hmm. Well, the people who push through that, spend a month drinking raw milk, even though they have a bad case, then that's it. It's cleared up, and it's cleared up for life, and the combo of high dose vitamin C and raw milk, you're correcting the milk as a prebiotic, so it's nourishing really good microbes in your gut. It's
why don't we take a little break and come back, and I have a few more questions for you. And so I just want to wrap this section up and say thank you, Theo. Let's show everyone our awesome t-shirts. Let's stand up and show them our vitamin C is my superpower.
Vitamin C is my superpower.
Love it. So thank you so much for being here, Theo. I might try to edit out a few of those longer chunks, but this is amazing, and I feel like we could probably talk for hours and hours, so I want to keep this manageable, and so we're going to close out right now. Was there anything else you wanted to say before I stop this particular session?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground today.
All right.
So thanks.
All right, great. All right, well, thank you so much. This was amazing, and I just appreciate you spending your time to share all this information, because like you said, it is just so powerful. And I mean, I really just feel like everything that happened in the past 2 years would have been impossible to happen, because if people had the knowledge, that knowledge is power, and we wouldn't be so easily manipulated by fear and all that. So that's my really strong feeling about it. So
it's absolutely true.
All right. Thanks so much, Theo. We'll see you again soon. Okay.